that fat bald guy? Oh, that's me.
All right, it's 6 o'clock. I'm going to call to order the meeting of the Brawley City Council and successor agency to Brawley Community Redevelopment Agency. This is our regular meeting agenda for Tuesday, April 6, 2021. We're in City Council chambers at 383 Main Street here in Brawley. We'll have the roll call.
The minutes will reflect all council members present.
Excellent. All right, and I guess I will give the invocation. We'll all stand. Let's pray. Almighty God and gracious Heavenly Father, we are grateful to you again this evening for this opportunity to come together and make decisions to guide our city in the best direction that we know how. And we ask that you would give us wisdom and guidance tonight. Lord, as we prepare our budget and as we look forward to this next fiscal year, we ask that you would give us wisdom and guidance. Lord, we thank you for the protection that you've afforded us and those of our city employees that are in public safety. We ask that you would continue to keep your hand of protection upon us. Lord, that this city would prosper and that we would come out of this pandemic better than we went into it. And I ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right, and Donnie, if you would lead us in the pledge.
My pleasure. Join me in the pledge. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, thank you. Item 1, approval of the agenda. Do we have a motion to approve?
This is George. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay. Item 2, public appearances and comments, not to exceed 4 minutes. This is the time for the public to address the council on any item not appearing on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the City Council. Is anyone here to give a public comment? No, nothing emailed in. Okay. We'll move on to item 3, consent agenda. Items are approved by one motion. Council members or members of the public may request consent items be considered separately at a time determined by the mayor.
Mr. Mayor, this is George. I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as written.
Got a motion? Is there a second?
And I'll second it.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Consent agenda carries. Item 4, regular business. 4A, update on City of Brawley declaration of local emergency as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. We'll have an overall outlook presented by our Fire Chief, Mike York.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council and city staff. Mike York, Fire Chief. Update for the current COVID-19 situation. As always, I encourage people to check out the various Imperial County dashboards for the latest in numbers. Specifically for the night's update, we do have the issue that over the last 2 weeks, we've seen our numbers slightly increase. But fortunately, as of announced very recently, with the proliferation of the COVID-19 vaccines in the state of California, the roadmap to recovery has allowed an expansion or an extension of the guidelines. And so the Imperial County Department of Public Health announced earlier today that we would be able to move to orange tier effective tomorrow. Now, there was some confusion on that, and basically our numbers did not meet the previous criteria. The criteria changed because of the proliferation of vaccines, most specifically among the population designated in the health equity quartile, which is the least served members of our community across the state. Also, this afternoon, Governor Newsom announced plans to fully reopen California. As of June 15th, there were some caveats that were specifically mentioned, specifically if hospitalizations remain low, if the vaccine supply remains sufficient. However, no criteria, guidelines, or regulations have been announced. There was some clarification that even if we fully reopen, that there are still going to be some common sense guidelines, and it was specifically mentioned that masks would still be required in public spaces when not safe to do so otherwise. Other local news, IVC. Now, IVC had a intermittent care facility set up that was taken down and moved to a warm status. As of last week, it was reconfigured, and they're calling it the QIS, or the Quarantine Isolation Shelter. What it's doing is it's housing persons that have been released from federal custody. It's for observation for persons that are either COVID positive or had a known COVID exposure. And once they are observed or they are tested negative, they are discharged out of this county. They don't remain here. And the current census as of this morning is 34. Local Brawley Fire and EMS response has remained pretty static. 291 calls for service, 147 that were COVID positive. Both those numbers have actually only gone up by 2 since the last council update. Very good news for us. Mentioning the Imperial County Department of Public Health website, they added a dashboard specific to vaccinations so that everybody can maintain awareness of where we're at. And just for this evening, in the Imperial County, there's been 71,100 doses administered. 27,000 of those are fully vaccinated, so they got the first and second dose, and we have 43,600 persons that have received their first dose and are awaiting their second dose. And the allocations are there for the second dose. Here in Brawley, because we need to be specific locally, we've had 4,224 persons within our city limits that have been fully vaccinated, and another 6,000 that are partially vaccinated. Currently, our vaccination criteria are eligible all persons 50 years or older. Currently, regardless of tier assignment, so whether it's essential workers, public safety, law enforcement, any of that, anybody's eligible at the 75-25 criteria. April 15th, it will move to all persons 16 years of age or older, so effectively opens it up to our entire public. As always, we're working with our local, state, and federal partners to continue coordinating response and needs. If there's any questions, I will do my best to answer those now.
Of those, you mentioned those that are partially vaccinated. How many of those are like no-shows for the second one?
I have no information on that, sir. It's just, that means the people that have received one dose only. Whether or not they're waiting for their second dose or no-shows, that is not, that's not specified.
Yeah, I'm curious if the window for that second vaccination is 30 days, and then after that, if you have to start the process all over and
Anecdotal and not verified. But my discussions with members of public health or persons involved in the vaccination clinics, the account of no-shows has been very low. People that get this vaccine are very interested, they're very dedicated, and all the vaccine clinics have done a very good job of ensuring that those appointments are kept the second time.
Thank you.
Just a quick comment, if I could. Just want to thank you for your work, Chief. And, I think sometimes we forget this is a worldwide pandemic, that we've gone through, and, the city has had great frontline response. So thank you for that, and please thank the staff. I know I do it often, but I do want to thank you again. It's not easy,
I appreciate that, sir, and I will say, unfortunately, we've had a lot of people that were very negatively affected in our city. However, I think we have to admit that we have been very lucky as a municipality compared to some of our peers across the state.
Yeah. How will we look back in 20 years, you know what I mean? So it's like, this is a really once-in-a-lifetime event, I hope,
Yeah,
and so
hopefully.
it's just not something we're going to experience all the time, so thank you.
Let us hope.
Yeah, no doubt.
The only other question that I had was, for Orange, can they go on the website to the county health department and find out what the Orange criteria is, or the state website, and find out?
Yes,
what
sir.
that
There's
criteria
links to
is?
both local and state information regarding what the criteria is, and it's still separated by industry. So maybe individual business owners can look up what their particular business
Right.
criteria is, as well as the general public.
Because I don't think we can look for everybody. I think everybody, like if you have a restaurant, you look for yours. If you have a gym, you look, for yours, and you see what those requirements are. I think we're going to have questions about it. They may ask you guys, they may ask the police and other people within the city regarding, can I do this, can I do that? We need to be able to steer them somewhere.
And that is accurate. The criteria does change somewhat depending on the industry or type of business or type of function you're holding.
Okay.
If
Thank
there's
you.
no further questions, members of the council, in your backup material, there is a resolution to extend our declaration of emergency by another 60 days. That is by council direction to revisit.
Okay, do I have a motion to extend?
I make a motion to extend the emergency declaration.
I will second that motion.
That's all right. There's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
All right, item 4B, discussion and potential action to approve amendment number 1 to City of Brawley Professional Services Agreement with Lee and Rowe Incorporated to provide services to prepare a water shortage contingency plan, or WSCP, as part of the Urban Water Management Plan Update 2020. This will be presented by Guillermo Cias, our Public Works Director, and backup is on pages 55 through 58.
Good evening, Mayor and the Council, Guillermo Cias, Public Works Director. This item is to issue an amendment in the number 1 for vehicle to prepare the water shortage contingency plan for the urban water management plan update 2020. And this is due to, this agreement to prepare this plan was assigned to a new role on December 15 last year. And this is a new requirement by the law that requires to prepare this contingency plan that was not contemplated during the approval of the original agreement with the consultant. And that's the reason for this amendment to provide additional funds to prepare this plan. This is in the amount of 14,842, additionally to the contract that the has with the city. Any questions that you have?
I have a few questions that it's not so much to do with the change order, but more to do with what our responsibility or what our reaction would need to be if there is a drought declared. I'm assuming that with this water shortage contingency plan, that whatever they put in that plan is what we're supposed to follow if there's a drought declared. Is that how that works?
It is a part of that, but also what will happen. There's two parts on this document. The urban water management plan includes a lot of other things like demographics, population growth, identify the source of water, use per capita, a lot of other things. But this particular other document, the contingency plan, it is like a plan of what are we going to do if we have an emergency or something happens to the water. This region relies on the water supply from the IOD, different from other cities like, for example, cities like Rio, Los Angeles, that have multiple sources of water, like probably some river together with 2 or 3 water supply from other cities or other sources, groundwater. We don't have that here. We pretty much are getting the water from the IOD to our canal, and that's what we have. So we have multiple sources. So the document is very straightforward, so we don't have many variables in terms of water supply. But the Colorado River is a very secure source of water for the region. And that at the beginning of this series, adjacent to the Colorado River.
So who requires that we have this water shortage contingency plan? Considering the fact that we get our water from IID, do they have the same type of WSCP that they have to submit?
It is a state regulation, so want to have these plants operated within 5 weeks, so it is to what the state of California has required.
So this is separate from if a drought is declared. This is more about an emergency if there's some interruption in the water supply then.
It includes drought too.
I guess what I'm concerned about is, you know, we have an entitlement to a certain amount of water as I guess based on the number of acres in our city. And I just remember, I don't know what it was, 5-6 years ago when drought conditions and regulations were enforced. I mean, to this day, if you look at Google Maps, the photos they have of Brawley are from that period of time. The parks are dry. You know, you see circles where grass is dried out around the sprinklers, and it occurs to me that was unnecessary. You know, it's like we have an entitlement to a certain amount of water. That water was not, it didn't disappear.
Well, it was because National Beef had closed. So that's the reason we had an excess amount of water. But otherwise, we may have been in a situation where we would have been faced with those restrictions too. But just for clarification too, the plan that is being proposed here and that we're ready to approve is also like contingency planning and like it's also like what you're doing with your recycled water. What are other plans? So it's not just about water usage.
Sure.
It contains other elements to it.
I just don't want to get backed into a corner unnecessarily where it's like we've got all this water that we are entitled to. Let's not put restrictions on ourselves that are not completely necessary. You know, just because the state says, hey, everyone else has to conserve water. You know, if we're entitled to whatever it is, 6 acre feet per acre per year in Brawley, let's use as much of that as we can instead of letting stuff dry out.
But it was a state mandate at the time. It was regardless of how much water was allocated to your city, it was a state mandate. You had to reduce by a certain percentage. The reason we met it was because the water that National Beef had previously used, and they were a major consumer of water within the city, major consumer of water within the city. When they stopped operating, that excess, even if people probably left their water running all day long, we never would have met that, you know, and so that's why, at least on paper, it looked like we were doing a great job. You know, there was all kinds of accolades in the paper and stuff. I'm like, well, we're not really doing anything. You know, it's just by virtue of the fact that there wasn't this huge operator out there.
But I think you're oh, sorry. So you're onto something, Mayor Hamby. The reservoirs aren't at the level that they should be in Southern California. Snowfall in the north was not even on average on par with every other year. So I think this year we can expect some kind of mandate to come down. We are probably going to experience another shortage in water this year. And so I think it's a good question, and we definitely should be ready for it.
Especially during the summer.
Yeah, so like I said, I don't want to say yes to something that's going to tie our hands and then say, well, even though we've got this water, even though it's coming to the valley and it's going to be used, either use it or lose it, I just don't want to say, yeah, we'll turn off the faucet just because you're telling us to, even though the water's there.
But this is just a contingency plan that's required. So it's just like doing the study on like what we're going to do for water conservation, what we're going to do with respect to like recycled water, how it's being utilized within the city. It's all those things. It's one of the many state mandates. I mean, ultimately, it's to protect the public, to make sure that they have a reliable source of water, which we know we do, right?
Sure.
But it's one of those things that just costs thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. Right. And I don't think it's totally pointless, but I do think that it's expensive. Yeah. And, at least for us, where we do have a huge allotment of water, it doesn't seem like it applies quite as much as it would somewhere else, right?
And I guess that begs the question, what happens if we don't have this water shortage contingency plan?
You get fined more than likely.
We get fined.
Yeah,
we get fined by the
these
water
are,
board.
it's one of unfortunately many, and we're probably going to talk about it on the next item coming up, unfunded mandates.
Right,
but,
yeah.
My only, just to add, I would just say if we're updating something that's already been required, it's already a plan on the books, I don't have an update. Yeah, things have evolved and changed, so updating it, I don't think necessarily hamstrings us any more than we have been.
Right,
with a program that's already in place. So it's not like we're doing something new.
Will we see this plan before it is implemented, or? Guillermo?
Mayor, we can bring back, once the report is prepared, we can definitely bring that back to council for review.
Okay, so all we're approving tonight is for them to create the WSCP. And then we can see it. We will then have the opportunity to approve it or not. I mean, I'm guessing that's not how it's
an
typically
amendment.
done.
This is
but-
an amendment, so it's already, yeah,
Yeah.
in place.
It's an amendment.
Well, I would like to see it, but it just seems to me like I just don't want it to be any worse than it has to be, you know?
I would like to see it too, because sometimes it feels like for my part, is that I feel like I'm approving expenses that I'm not very comfortable with because I'm not familiar with it as well as I would like to be.
Right.
But certainly something to look at.
We
Yeah.
can bring, again, Mayor, we can bring back the draft when it's available before it's, with the study that's involved with this and brief council on it.
Okay, I would appreciate that.
Mr. Mayor, today was published on the newspaper, notice of public hearing, is informing the public that the document, the draft document will be available on April 12th.
Guillermo, could you speak more into the microphone and repeat that, please?
Is that today was published on the newspaper, notice of public hearing, informing the public that draft document will be available on April 12th. It will be on Public Works Office. I believe that it will be on the council chamber and on the website.
Okay.
So you can check, and if you want the next council meeting, I can invite the consultant that is preparing, provide a presentation or respond specific questions that you may have. And so it's up to the council to request
It could be good, just to get an update.
Yeah,
That'll work.
I think that'd be good.
I
We
would
can view
satisfy.
that, update on the city website between now and the next council meeting, and then, yeah, it would be good to have that consultant here to,
That'd be
if
the
we have any
20th.
questions
Okay.
on the
Okay.
20th. All right, thanks, Guillermo. Is there a motion to,
Well, having heard that and having said that, I will make the motion to approve the amendment.
okay,
I'll second it.
it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstentions? Motion carries. I'm guessing you didn't think that there was going to be that much discussion for that, but
I'm glad you brought it up.
A little water under the bridge now, you know what I
it's the
mean?
water under the bridge. Just,
It is there.
yeah, let it roll off your back like
There
a
you
duck. Okay, item 4C, discussion and potential action regarding utility users ballot. This will be presented by our city manager, Tyler Salcido, and our finance director, Carla Romero. The backup is on pages 59 through 70. Welcome, Carla.
Mayor, I will defer to our finance director, Carla, and reserve any comments or questions you may have after the presentation. One thing to note is it's a utility users tax ballot, where we had a typo there on that item, but it's going to be reference to UUT.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Thank you, Tyler. Good evening, council members, staff, and members of the public. My name is Carla Romero, and I'm the finance director for the city. As Tyler mentioned, I won't be doing this alone. I'll be doing the bulk of the presentation, but certainly have my support here. So I'm sure Tyler is able to answer a lot of questions, and then also our city attorney, Bill, from the legal perspective, and then also our city clerk, because she has a relationship with the county and the register of voters and that knowledge base. So collectively, we are here to talk about the utility user tax, a potential ballot measure during a special election sometime in 2021. So thank you for putting up the presentation, Armando. I appreciate that. Let's see here. this mouse over. So what we will be talking about today are several things, and I'll go through them, and I'll kind of pause in between, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them as we go along the presentation. Don't want you to forget something you might have thought of in the middle of the presentation. But basically, we'll be reviewing the history of the utility user tax for the city of Brawley. We'll determine if a ballot measure should be placed on a special election before the before the UUT expires in May of '22. We're going to discuss some options for the utility user tax ballot measure, have you weigh in on those options and give us some potential direction, and then also outline what the next steps would be if the ballot measure is to be considered. So I have lots of slides here. So what we'll start with is the history of the utility user tax. It was first adopted in 1991, so it has been a tax that has been around that the residents are used to paying. The rate, though, has varied. It has varied up to 5%. Sometimes it has increased incrementally depending on what year it was. It's actually been renewed 7 times. The first 3 times was via ordinances for the city in 1991, 92, and 96. And then we had 4 ballot measures since then in 98, 2005, 2011, and 2017. So this would be the 8th time that the ballot measure would be renewed. As mentioned earlier, it does currently expire May 31st of 2022. This really is an essential revenue for the city because it helps support our essential city services. So when we talk about essential, we're talking about police, fire are the 2 main ones, but it also helps support parks, community facilities such as the senior center, our pool, parks and recreations, the administration of the city, and that's just, finance, the city clerk, the city manager's office, all of the functions of the city, and of course the libraries that the city also operates. This is a general tax, not a special tax, so it's not specifically geared towards one service, but certainly if for some reason the utility user tax was to go away, we'd have to look at all of these expenditures within the city and determine what is it that we're not going to be able to fund anymore. Because without the revenue, we'd have to make those difficult decisions as well. The annual revenue right now is about $1.9 million. What that equates to is about 9% of all of the general fund revenues. But specifically, when you're talking about tax revenue of the city is a little over $10 million of the $17 million. So we have total revenues of about $17.1 million, and $10 million of that is derived from taxes. So when you're only looking at tax revenue, this utility user tax is 19%. That's a big amount of our tax revenue for the city. So the utility user tax revenue is 100% locally collected and remitted back to the city. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that's important on a few slides from now. There is oversight by external independent auditors, so this is definitely part of our audit process. It's reported on our financial statements, and so there's some transparency there as well. It is protected from state takeaways, so the state isn't able to say, hey, Brawley, we need some of that utility user tax. Let's go ahead and have you remit part of that to us. And it's also locally controlled for city services. So we're not mandated by the state. We just talked a lot about state mandates right now, and we'll go over that a little bit more in the next slide. But we are also not obligated as a city to fund certain things with this tax. It is completely controlled locally for services that we determine are benefit the city as a whole. Let's see here. Let's talk a little bit more about these unfunded mandates. Certainly the last staff report explained one of the recent ones, but we've had several. We have Assembly bills, Senate bills, regulatory requirements, state, federal mandates, court rulings. We also have propositions that go into effect. We have economic fluctuations, and I'd like to take a moment, just give you a few examples. Finance has become the most complicated thing, especially government finance. No 2 years are alike, and no 2 cities are alike. And so what we're realizing is that we have to keep up with all of these things every single year as they continue to evolve and figure out how do we piece together that puzzle. And that's why the budget is never, ever the same year over year. So when we're talking about Assembly bills and Senate bills, we recently had SB 1159 that talked about just COVID and workplace safety, family rights, reporting requirements if you have 5 or more employees. We also had Assembly Bill 1826 back in 2016 that had some recycling programs, and now we're seeing the organic waste trigger as of 2021. And then we had Senate Bill 330 in 2019 that promoted housing development through accessory dwelling units, kind of granny flats, where now the city's planning department has like a 30-day turnaround to approve all of those applications. And then on top of that, the development impact fees that are associated with those are frozen at the time when the application is submitted. And so all of that, those things change, how we operate as a city. We have regulatory requirements. We have kind of electric vehicle charging station requirements kind of coming down on us. We have reduced emission requirements we're having to look at when we're looking at new developments coming into the city. We have reduced local control over the implementation of our 5G telecommunications that's coming down from the state as well. We, of course, have additional reporting and disclosure requirements. Finance always has GASB updates. Our General Accounting Standards Boards always continue to provide new updates that we have to implement at our leisure, kind of with those deadlines. We have like the Transparent California payroll reporting requirement that we had to implement. We also have a lot of state and federal mandates. We have a little thing called RHNA, the Regional Housing Needs Allocation. That means that every city has to increase the availability of affordable housing. Again, not funded, but we have to figure out how to get developers to pay and develop affordable housing units. To be fair, the federal government also gave us CARES Act and American Rescue Plan money, but no money is free money. All money comes with additional reporting and tracking requirements that the finance department has to adhere to and that we need to make sure that we understand. Then there's also these court rulings that we are now facing. We've had a good one with the sales taxes regarding the Supreme Court case where South Dakota versus Wayfair required that out-of-state online retailers collect the sales tax on sales when you're delivered inside to this residence based on kind of where the point of delivery, whereas before some of them weren't remitting that tax, and so that was actually additional revenue to the agencies. And then we recently had a property tax Court of Appeals case here in California with the City of Chula Vista versus Sandoval. And what that did was effectively change the way redevelopment property tax trust fund distributions, RPTTF for short, is distributed to agencies. So it's uniform throughout the state of California. So some agencies benefited, some agencies didn't. So some people lost money and some people gained money from that court ruling. Then we also have these wonderful propositions. Two of the most famous ones are Proposition 13 back in 1978 that limited the local property taxes within the cities and made it more uniform rather than having different variables and different rates for each one of the cities. Then we have Prop 218, which is why we're having to discuss this and have a potential ballot measure in order to renew the utility user tax. And then, of course, we have all these economic fluctuations. So we have this little thing called COVID. We mentioned earlier it's a global impact. So everybody, nobody's immune to COVID and the financial constraints and impacts regarding that. We have national recessionary periods that we need to keep in mind and watch out for. And then we also have all these local trends and demands that are constantly changing and also have to be vigilant. So a lot that the city has to track and keep updates on. And so we always wonder, well, we have this sunset and we're going back to the voters, and why do we need to keep going back? Well, it's because of all of these collective things that are happening that are out of our control, frankly. These are all coming down on us, and nobody gets to say, oh, do you want to implement the Assembly Bill? Do you want to implement the state mandate? Mm-hmm. The answer is no. We have to implement the state mandate. We just have to figure out a way to do it. So what we have here is a discussion on money. So the top general fund revenue sources, the city has 4. The top revenue source is the vehicle license fee property tax swap. But then we also have what are effectively property taxes, sales taxes, and utility user taxes. And what I'd like to take a moment here is just explain, a lot of the residents think or taxpayers think that we get all of the money from all of these sources, and that is not necessarily that's not the case. So with our property taxes, the city only gets 22 cents for every dollar paid. So I pay my taxes, the city only gets 22 cents per dollar. And what that budget right now is about $1.7 million of city revenue with the current budget cycle. And then for our sales tax, the sales tax when we go buy goods is 7.75%, but the city only gets 1% of that 7.75%. And so that in effect equates to about almost $2.3 million of sales tax revenue. The difference is that the utility user tax is 100% goes back to the city. So the rate is 4%, and 100% of that 4% comes back to the city, and that's about $1.9 million in revenue. So no two taxes are alike either. So let's kind of put that into perspective. Where does the rest of the money go, Carla? Where does the rest of the property taxes and sales tax money go? Most of our property tax money goes to schools. 59% of it goes to the schools. 22%, as mentioned earlier, goes to the city. 12% goes to the county. And then some other small percentages there are going to special districts, fire protection, and the library. And then on our sales tax distribution, we see here that only 1% again goes to the city. 6%, the majority of that 7.75% goes back to the state. We have the Measure D, which is that Imperial Valley Transportation, 0.5%, and then the state also allocates an additional 0.25% to transportation as well. So again, we're seeing here that not all the dollars come back to the city for these different tax sources.
I like your presentation.
Thank you. Oh, and I forgot to mention on the previous slide as well is that not only does not all of the sales tax revenue come back, but there's a lot of exemptions. So our groceries and like our prescription medication are exempt from taxes. And so not every time you go to the store and buy every little item are you taxed either. So, and the city does not have an additional transaction and use sales tax. And those taxes do range from city to city. So for sales tax, you can go as low as 7.25. And again, Brawley's at 7.75. But some agencies are as high as 10.5%. And so we are definitely on the lower end on the sales tax rate.
Carla, on that, I just had a question about that. So the cities that have the higher sales tax rate, do they get all of that extra? So where we're at 7.75% and we get 1% of that, the cities that are at 10.5%, do they get the extra 2.5%?
It depends. So sometimes there are special taxes within the district. So like for us, for our example would be the Measure D. The Measure D could have been 1%. And so even though the tax rate could have been higher, the city itself wouldn't be getting all of the revenue. That would be going to the transit agency. Mm-hmm. Other cities, yes. You could have an effective 2%, up to 2%. So you have a transaction tax as well, and the transaction tax could be an additional 1% on top of the regular Bradley-Burns tax. Mm. So it just depends on the agency.
Okay.
Good question, though. So I think that's a good segue to this slide here, where I'd like to caution you that, again, no two agencies are alike. Locations vary, the population of the city varies, the services that the city provides varies, contracts that the city has vary, number of employees, benefits provided to those employees, agencies' long-term liabilities are different, your revenue sources are diverse, and employment within the area is different, and just like the average income and trends, everything is different for every agency. We did provide you an attachment, though, just in particular for the utility user tax and kind of how that varied, but I just caution you against, doing like comparisons only because every single agency is so different. And rather focus on just Brawley's needs and the operation of our particular budget.
Well, what we said, let's focus on us. Who cares what the other cities, we're not like them, So.
Yeah.
Carla, just, and also, maybe it's coming up, I know it's a smaller piece of the pie, but also TOT tax would be another
correct
tax source, and I know that's almost a different topic too, because I believe there's even additional. We'd have to go through the same process, but I think add-ons to a transit, a TOT tax, such as I've seen hospitality and accommodation and all these different line items. If you,
Oh, yes.
anyone that travels and stays in hotels, you'll notice that some of the more aggressive cities that are maybe tourist-driven have many other
yeah.
additions on
I think of
that
Anaheim as a good example.
Yeah.
They even tax like the resort fees in
Yeah.
some cities
There you
if they
go.
have resort fees. But Anaheim is a great example of that. I mean, I can't tell you off the bat, but I think the last time I checked, their TOT rate was like 18%.
Wow.
I mean, it was really, really high. So when we go and we check into the hotel, and then, you know, that tax is like $40, you know, it ends up pretty big at the
Yeah.
end of the day. Yeah, depending on how long your stay is, of
Yeah.
course. But yes. So Brawley is a full-service city, which is what made me really excited about kind of coming back home and working for this city, because it is a full-service city. It's not a contract city. So the difference is that Brawley has its own police department, fire department, airport, water, wastewater, and libraries. So a lot of times agencies contract for these services and they lose that local control, whereas we've retained it here at the city of Brawley. But we've also retained the expenditures associated with those and those long-term liabilities. But it is important to note because we don't get to just call, you know, a contractor and say, well, we need to reduce, you know, our services or reduce that contract rate. In effect, what we would have to do is determine, you know, are we reducing hours of operations? Are we closing facilities? What would we do if we didn't have this revenue source? Brawley's UUT rate is 4%, as mentioned earlier. In the attachment, you'll see there's 162 cities within California that have utility user tax, and they range from 1% all the way up to 11%. Again, depends on the city, depends on the population. And the other thing you'll notice in the attachment is that not everything is taxed uniformly across all the agencies. Some kind of picked and choose what it is that they wanted to tax with their utility user tax. For Brawley, the utility user tax is applied to water, wastewater, electricity, gas, cable television, and landline phone services. Those last two, cable television and landline phone services, are really becoming kind of outdated, right? What we're seeing now is that most agencies are including other telecommunications, such as cell phones, because they're now replacing those landlines, and internet-based services. And we're talking about there is like Netflix, Hulu, you know, those things that are becoming much more popular and replacing the cable television. So it's not necessarily, and we'll see here, we're going to ask you, should we include those other services, those new kind of modernized telecommunication services? To me, that doesn't mean that we're extending the tax. It's more like we're including the new services that are more relevant. The other ones may become obsolete, and so now is our opportunity to kind of revamp that and re-energize it. So this is where we want to hear a lot from our council members and figure out what it is that we want to do. We have 4 different questions for your consideration, and I could take them one by one or go over all of them and then ask for your direction, whichever you prefer. Do you have a preference?
Yeah, let's go one by one.
Okay, so the first question is, should there even be a ballot measure? Should we consider having a special election? Yes or no?
What are the options besides letting it expire?
If we don't have the ballot measure, it would effectively expire. We could wait until, let it expire and then wait and not have a special election and wait until 2022, November of 2022. There was a fiscal impact within the staff report, and I went back and we looked, and Alma did call the county registrar of voters office, $50,000. That would be the price if only Brawley did a ballot measure. Nobody else did, and there was no governor re-election, nothing. So that's way on the high end. But when I went back and I looked at kind of where the expenses have been, back in 2015 was the highest, it was $11,000. 2018 it was $8,273, and in 2020 it was $5,517. The reason that varies is because the county registrar of voters would have to mail out and do all these additional requirements, and I believe now they have additional requirements as well for mail-in ballot measures and whatnot. But that's definitely on the high end. It would be the most, and we would have to kind of tighten that up and figure out what that rate would be and then include it in our budget. as well.
I guess what I was alluding to was like, does the council have the option to implement this?
No,
No, okay.
we have to go to the voters for implementation because of the Proposition 218 requirement.
That's why it's
Yes.
important to consider if it fails, right? Let's say it were to fail and we waited till after it expired and it lapsed, and we wait the 6 months, and then it failed, then I mean, that's a potentially really difficult situation we're going to be in. So, I mean, considering the circumstances, I know that it was on a ballot recently, it failed, and we didn't support it as a council, just the way it was written, and it gives us more time to reconsider some of what's being discussed here today. But
Recover from COVID, too.
to answer that first question, should it be placed on a ballot measure via special election? I would think that the sooner that we can get this resolved, the better.
Are we prepared, should there be a recall on the governor? That, I'm thinking that's probably the nearest special election that we might face here in the state or in the city. Are we prepared to move forward on if there was to be called up anytime soon?
Prepared to move forward with the
Yeah, like
utility user
added to the
tax?
special election. Are we prepared for that?
I think there's, the issue with that is there's not a lot of clarity on that right now. So, right, there's a state of flux, there's a whole process for that. But I think just maybe principally answering the question so we can move to the others and then kind of rounding back. I think it's pretty binary, right? Yes or no. I think the UUT, yeah, definitely, we need to, unless there's heavy opposition, right, to moving for that.
I don't think there's any opposition.
Yeah.
My question is, I think when we had this discussion, the last time we put this on the ballot, they said we could not do it under a special election. It had to be a general election with other elections being considered, or other people running, other things going on in the election. It could not be simply the UTT.
That's a good point, yeah.
Standalone. I think that was our discussion.
So that's the general rule, Mr. Couchman, but there's an exception, and that is if the city declares an emergency. So what would happen if the answer is yes, then the next thing would happen is we'd have a resolution for you declaring an emergency saying that this needs to go.
It needs to be,
Okay, so
otherwise it would
emergency
lapse.
precludes all of it.
Off the top of my head, I think it has to be a 4-1 vote.
Okay.
And maybe for
That was my
council,
question.
my only additional.
Good point, though. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, no, thank you. Comment to that would just be, and we need to balance probably timing, right, times of the issue. I think like Councilmember Navas said, just as long as we have ample runway or appropriate runway so that, the communication can take place, the engagement with the community with the right, committees, groups, all that, so.
That segues back into
Yeah.
Mr. Castro's point. If there is going to be a special election, the sooner we get our process
put
rolling,
together.
Yeah.
the better our chance of jumping on that.
Yeah.
In the backup, I think you mentioned November 2nd. Is
Yep,
there a,
Mayor, yeah, if I may comment on that. There's an election that's going to be held regardless of the recall on November 2nd with some school districts and some other smaller
Okay, so
cities,
that-
unincorporated areas that are going to be on the ballot anyway. So that would be our opportunity regardless of the recall but we would still need to declare the emergency.
Okay.
Yeah.
And as Carlos will present, there's a timeline for that, and we're ready, pending direction. We will make every deadline that's needed.
Okay, all right. So that answered my question.
and that'll probably affect the cost of it as well, if it's.
Oh, definitely.
If there's other things going on. Yeah, and I think we're better off having a few other things on ballots and things, because I think when you just put one thing on, that could be an issue, it might be a positive.
Right.
I don't know how to analyze that from a voter standpoint. The other thing is, we seem to be coming somewhat out of COVID.
Right.
And one of the reasons why we the wording was a problem, but also it was COVID. And so I think under the circumstances, if we're coming out of COVID and everything else looks good, then I think it may be an appropriate time to put it on the ballot as soon as we can, as soon as feasible. But remember, we don't have much time, because it's May, June, July, August, September, October, and November will hit. So we have to have about a 3-month window for informational, for other organizations to come on board if they want to support the measure, et cetera, et cetera. Remember, we can't lobby for it. We can do educational type stuff, and I think this is probably a good educational slideshow right here, because it
very
it
good.
educates us a lot on what's going on out there. It also educates the public as to the limitations that we have and what good it does. We may have to do some more work on where the money goes and how it goes out there, but other than that, it does illustrate how little bit of the tax money that we do receive
I think the
in many
presentation
cases from
does it
different
well,
sources.
yeah.
I think the public will know that, but I think they may already know that, but they don't know, I don't think they know it in quite that amount of detail. So good.
So I think
Okay,
we're
yes.
all agreed on that first question.
That
Yes.
first question.
If
Yeah.
it's legal.
And the second, third, and fourth question is going to be, those are, you know,
I think, honestly, I think that we need to really engage the community, because over the years, the city has approved overall to the initial implementation and then the extensions. What they didn't approve was just that addition last time. So if we work with our community to see what it is they want to be taxed on, a lot of the complaints were, you know, the elderly were going to be taxed. Well, we remove the landlines and add the cell phones, and, you know, we eliminate that need because most of the elderly only use landlines. So things like that, I think, would help, because, like I said, the community has approved this over and over. And I think, honestly, having a sunset date on it is kind of a waste of time. We keep going back and wasting money and discussing it. Once it's established, once the community gives us our guidance, I think that's, at least in my opinion, that is, I think, the correct way to approach it.
I think valid points. I would offer this, and I did speak to Mayor Hamby about this previously, but I would suggest to the council to involve the community. I don't say, we've discussed this many, many, many times, right? But if we can appoint individually as council members, a person from the community that represents essentially the community, just to gather, to form a short committee and go through this presentation with them so they can have some input and bring it back to us, I think that would be valuable. Because with respect to the 4%, that might be too low, to be quite frank with you. It might be too low. And if we're going to hold it in perpetuity until like the voters repeal it, because that's something we've obviously talked about many a times, right? And that would help us gain a better understanding, at least from the public's perspective, and then it's going to help give us more strength as we move forward. So it's better refined, because this last time we all know that it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
And so if we do need to put it before the public, that might be a way to do it. So anyway, that's just.
Sam.
On the 4%, what's our estimate, and we may not even have those figures, if we included the satellite TV and the Netflix and all of that type of thing, hypothetically, and if we also included cell phones, et cetera, how much more revenue at the 4% rate would that bring into us hypothetically? And we probably may not have those figures. It'd be neat to know what we anticipate that figure would be, at least on an average, because that would tell me whether it needs to stay at 4% or whether it could be reduced or whether it needs to be increased. That would tell me a lot about.
But let's not say Netflix, because that's not what we're taxing.
No, I know.
No, but we have to be clear.
Telecommunication, I know, and that's where that's where we get into a lot of trouble.
Yeah,
We need to
but-
be very specific about what we're taxing with these individuals, because some people think, well, they're just gonna tax
Right.
everything. But no, I think we need to be very
Let's
specific.
better defined, yeah, exactly.
My
yeah.
personal opinion is cell phones and say satellite TV, and that's about as far as me on a personal level I like to go, because when you deal with those other things.
Well, you're talking about
those are a little-
internet services.
Yeah.
But look, internet services, that's the other thing too, because we have to better define it. And we did have a presentation on this previously, and it wasn't by city staff, if you remember. It was the taxing authority that
Yes.
actually, that presented it to us. Maybe we can revisit that document to see what they suggested.
Right.
Because I think it's going to be really important how we structure this. It's going to define things for a long time.
Councilmember Nava,
absolutely.
I think to your point, I think it falls in the bucket of the definition of a utility, which is ultimately regulated, right, to whether it's by the federal government or, the state government. So if it's a utility, right, with kind of the
Right.
label of the tax.
Right.
And it obviously fits that definition. Really, this is a technology upgrade.
Right,
to-
it's an
or
upgrade.
revision, I should
Right.
say. And we've kind of, refrained from moving forward with that.
Because satellite TV is even outdated.
Right,
I
yeah.
mean, that
Yeah.
won't last another 3 years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not going to be forever.
I
Yeah.
understand that.
Yeah.
But what my only cautionary thing is, when we talk about it, I can see holding our ground at 4%. But as a precautionary thing, I think anytime you're going to increase on anything, you're going to run into a certain amount of opposition from that, just because of the increase. You may have not as much opposition if you keep it at a certain rate that it's always been, and you can say, look, it's always been that, or it's been that for quite a while. Can we keep it at this rate? And a lot of people will say, okay, I agree. Now, they may be willing to include some other things in that 4%, but they may not be willing to go above the 4% and vote yes or no. That's what happens when you get into the voting booth.
I do think, though,
I don't know that we're prepared to decrease it at this point in time, because I don't think we have a good idea of what we're dealing with. And so, I mean, we could come down, a good selling point for getting it passed might be to come down to 3%.
maybe
But
not.
is that-
Maybe
but
a selling
not.
point is not to come down.
Yes.
Maybe a selling point is to actually increase it to where we're not struggling
Right.
year after year
And
after
maybe
year.
increase services.
You know, it's an increased
That's true.
service. So that's why a good presentation with good information presented well and being very clear and thorough like this is, where people understand how the money's being allocated and it's very clear like what's being taxed, that I think is a better opportunity for people to understand, and where you're not like so concerned about, okay, is it 4%, 5%? Yeah, I mean, obviously nobody wants to pay more, but if you know that your city struggles year after year, there are unfunded mandates, and this money is going to go help and offset much of that expense for public safety, for public services. We know how important they are, especially in COVID. We've seen it, right? And we're coming out of that. Well, I mean, that's also a clear, a better understanding for the public.
Right.
So I don't think.
Councilman, also, another thing to add to that is, this is the only one, and I'm glad you pointed that out, Carla, the only tax that it all comes back to the city. Everything else is just a little chunk of it.
Yeah.
I think that's very important for
exactly.
for the public to understand that. It's huge.
This is your money that stays here. Right?
Absolutely.
Uh-huh,
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
And that's a different,
Mr. Mayor, maybe it sounds like, I mean, maybe the way to approach is to move forward on the second bucket by saying at least stay principally here at the
Right.
4%,
Yeah.
but through discovery, right, as we're
Yeah.
talking about really kind of getting the engine, revved up here as far as engagement. I think we still have some space to, if we come to a different understanding based on input, based on facts, maybe further fact finding, then we might adjust that. Yeah.
Calpatria had a consultant last time around analyze what they were proposing and give revenue projections. They were able to do it really quickly and inexpensively, and we have all that information. I can get it, pass it on to city manager.
And we have some information like that from our
Yeah.
previous visits.
Yes, we do.
But I can say this, we have been reluctant, and I won't use the term afraid, but we've been reluctant to introduce, things to the public. I think we have to get away from that. We
Right.
really just need to make it, whatever we're going to go for, it needs to just be clear. It's going to have to make sense for everybody, and whatever it is, it is. But this is our time. It's not like we're going to get many shots at this.
Right.
If we're going to do it right. We didn't pass it, and we didn't
Yeah.
support it this past time because of COVID and because of the way it was written, and because honestly, the way it is now, it's antiquated,
Yeah.
right? But we know we need it, so now's the time to do it right.
I would be interested to know what the approval percentage rate was the last 3 times this has been passed. I only know about the 2017 ballot measure, and that was I think it was like a 2/3 vote that it passed. And so the public is clear that I think by and large, they understand that it's needed and that it all comes back to the city of Brawley. I think most of the voting public understands that, and it doesn't hurt to reiterate that. But as to George's point, if we're clear and concise, I think the public support is there. I don't think we should back away from, what we've currently got. I think we need to take advantage of modernization, for the modern telecommunications and, internet services and
Modern
cell phone
utilities, yeah, whatever that is,
stuff
right?
that people are actually
Telecommunications.
using. I mean, I do still have a landline, but it's, it's bundled to
Hey,
my,
what?
I do too.
it's bundled to my,
Yeah,
my
that's the only
Spectrum
reason I have it.
internet, yeah.
I'm
I
sure.
have a
You have a landline as well?
And I'm, yeah, because it's
I do.
bundled. But I'm sure there's a reason.
Oh, you can bundle it.
Because it's practically free, and I'm sure there's a reason they do that.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure there has to be some sort of subsidy or
Right,
something
yes,
that they
yeah.
get for landline
Yes,
usage.
that's probably
So,
very
And I
that's
have
the
a
only reason.
landline too, and one of the reasons is during a major earthquake, sometimes the satellite goes down for your cell phone, and sometimes the landline works.
Yeah.
And so there's a whole lot to be said for that.
Whatever, the earth corrects right where the phone's at.
Oh, then it's gone, then it's all gone, and if the earth cracks and we all fall
Okay,
in,
just let it go.
isn't gonna
It won't
matter.
matter.
So I
Call
think
it
for the time
down
being,
below, and I don't
did you have something to add to that, Tyler?
If I can make a few comments on the conversation that.
We were having
council's-
so much fun, though.
Yeah,
Okay,
you were.
that's fine.
So, council's intent the last time this was put before you was to modernize the technology, which included cell phones, bills, and internet streaming type services, among some few other things. So that was the intent last time, and to have, it was the flat 4%, not an increase. To Councilmember Couchman's question about what would the projections look like, we don't have those figures yet. What we do know is it's a declining if it stays right here. Even if it was just passed,
Right.
just to hold status quo, it's going to be declining. It's been
Declines.
declining.
It's a time.
So to that point, and to Councilmember Nava's point with community engagement, that's exactly what is needed. But time is of the essence if we're going to engage, because when Carla takes over with the rest of the presentation, there's timelines. And to wait, we can't wait if we're going to get community engagement.
Yeah.
And so time is of the essence.
We're all in agreement on all of this.
Yes.
Yep.
Good
When
point.
when it comes to that, at least I would be very comfortable, we at least got a survey from the community. I mean, there's got to be a little bit of engagement, even a survey, just put out there, you know, I think that you would get a pretty good amount of feedback without the scheduled meetings and whatnot. We got to have some of that in order for them to support this measure.
But I think a survey can be powerful, but if they don't have the right information to decide on, I think it's going to be also a way for us to be discouraged and say, they're not. You see what I'm saying? So
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. That's why I thought, look, if we all appoint somebody to a committee, right? Community members, we all know them, right? That got their really their thumb on the pulse here in the community. Get them to get their input, have them sit through this presentation and get their input just to see what their thoughts are too. You know, I think that's important because they speak for a group of people as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know? Anyway, that's just my
Staff, a little factoid, if I can remember correctly, and it's based on utility accounts. It's not based on population, correct, in terms of passage. It's based on, I'm going to use a
Wait,
round
wait,
number of
okay,
the
yeah.
5,000 utility, or no?
No, it's a general population.
Okay, okay.
Yeah. You're talking about the vote?
Simple majority of
Yes.
votes cast.
Yes.
Okay.
Simple majority, it's not
Yes.
two-thirds, it's not
Yes.
a.
But
you
I
know, it's
did
not a-
appreciate Councilmember Wharton's comment with respect to just, consider it's just a modernization of the utilities in existence now. That's it.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it's not
yeah.
like we're reinventing the wheel.
I
It's
think
just
that's okay. I
modernization
think most
of
of
it.
us are in agreement. We
Yeah.
just wanted to be specific what we are going
Right.
to do it to
Yeah.
and what we're not.
So people understand, because there's a lot of misinterpreting or misinformation. and-
Correct.
But
So-
the sooner the better we get this
What do you
information.
suggest, Tyler,
On which aspect?
as far as like community engagement?
Oh, well, I think, my opinion with surveys, particularly one, time factor, two is a biased, even when I'm taking a survey, I have a certain bias already, and when I'm reading the question a certain way. I do not think that would be the best use of our time and resources. I think community engagement, meeting with the social clubs,
Yes.
civic duty clubs, having some town
gets-
halls, but.
Is there time for that?
Yes, well,
Yeah.
we're going to have to make time to educate and help people understand exactly what we're up against. And that's, again, that cannot be done by staff during business hours, and it all has to be generated from a citizen group that maybe needs to be formed, something like that. I
Yeah, last
would
time-
I would definitely recommend that we update the telecommunications like last time, modernizing it. As far as the rate, I'll leave that up to council.
But we can't present like this.
Oh,
Sure
yeah,
we
this
can.
is
That can be
education.
presented, because this is just
Sure
educational
we can.
information. so-
Yeah, exactly.
And I think honestly, this is pretty eye-opening.
And
so-
this would open dialogue when we
Yeah.
present to somebody.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can definitely present this as long as we're not advocating. So,
Right.
yeah.
As I recall, the last time that we did this, we did some focus groups, I think,
Yes.
that met with us. But I know that a lot of it was personal, one-on-one,
Yeah.
education of the public, different things that we did in groups. It's harder to do that now with COVID. though, to get together with a group and talk one-on-one, but a personal one-on-one educational process is much better. Surveys, you're going to get 20% of the people answering the survey, but it's going to be a certain select group and not necessarily the overall general population. So I think we've got to have some way to communicate with them. And I think the best thing we did last time
There
was
was
we had a
committees.
community
Remember,
group.
there was
We had a community
committees.
group, and all those people kind of went out there and talked to their
From
friends.
law enforcement
the
and from
people,
others,
And
you
law
know, so,
enforcement supported,
Yeah.
so public safety support is
Yeah.
important. Library support is important. And anybody else that's involved. The parks is a big issue with people. So that's always a strong selling point for keeping the parks in a certain way and keeping them open in a certain way. And we have a good recreational program. COVID's hurt us in a lot of different ways, but it's not necessarily our fault. It's just that COVID's restricted some of the things that we normally do. But I think those are the things you have to sell, and you have to sell them almost one-on-one.
And there have been committees that were formed specifically to support
Absolutely.
the utility user
Right,
tax.
yeah.
So
And they
I
were
recall
good-
that
and they
there
were
was-
good committees with people that
Yeah.
knew the city and that also knew their community.
Yeah,
So that's
time to
important.
do
who
it.
you appoint.
I only suggested a survey because I thought we didn't have time to meet some of the deadlines that you were.
I don't think we can do this.
But yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, throw it
Did
out. Forget about the survey.
I think did we answer most, I think, through the discussion?
What's
kinda,
not clear to
with
me
the
is
ord-
whether council wants to have
A sunset or not, yes.
Sunset.
I would
I
like
would
to
say
eliminate
no.
that.
I
'cause
would say
that's-
no.
To take that out
I'd
of
like
the
to
equation.
I think it needs to be
It
long
costs
until
money
it's
every
repealed.
time we bring this back, and
If
Yeah.
we get to a point where we know we don't need it, or as a city, or we know that we need to continue it, or whatever, I think we should be able to make that decision without having to go every 5 years and try to convince the voters
Yeah.
that we need it. I think as it's moving along, if we ever receive a point where we're independent of this money, then we can make decisions, or we can reduce it if we want to. There may be an opportunity to reduce it down in some way, and that would be the only reason why I think we should relook at it. So I think the stay in effect until voters repeal. Yes. So that's not,
There's no prohibition on that.
right, yeah.
because I think the sunset date means we get put back in the same position over and over again. And I've been in it many times, being here as long as I have on the council. And George has probably been here longer, but we both have gone through this numerous times of redoing this, a couple of different times anyway.
But I don't think, I think this is the first time, quite frankly, since I've been on council, where we're taking a much bolder stance on things.
Correct.
Right? Where we're kind of defining, okay, this is what we're going to do.
I agree
If
with
we're going to say it's going to be long-term, it's not going to sunset. You know, we've said it before, but if we're going to move forward in that fashion, this is the first time we're doing
I
that.
think the last time
You know.
we had some concerns about not sunsetting
Yeah.
it. But I think in this situation, I think with our current situation here at the city, I think it's best that we push everything that we're talking about and just push it forward and let's move with it.
Yeah.
Right now, I mean, we got
So,
to
yeah,
move right
you
now.
got, I think you got all the answers there, except for the 4%. And I think in general, we want to keep it the same, pending a little research on that. But I
And
think even so, it's like
And being open to maybe even increasing, you know,
yeah.
so.
Yeah.
5%. 5 is a good round number.
Our community groups
Yeah.
before we do that, though.
But what, did anybody have any input with respect to well, I don't even know if we can appoint a community group, because it has to be really outside committee, but maybe a community member that would like to form a committee. That might be
The
something.
Chamber of Commerce has offered their assistance in any way that they can. I know last time they weren't necessarily involved with the push, with the campaign for it, but they, their facilities were used for some of the meetings, the community meetings.
I remember that.
Members
But-
of city staff have all done it outside of work.
Yeah.
You know, so.
But the Chamber has offered to help out more this time around. If we-
George, maybe to that point, if our city attorney can clarify, as council members, kind of just a quick review, we can individually, again, educate, raise awareness, have conversation, correct?
Members, you can
It's
talk
actually
about
a
it,
job,
you can
yeah.
Inform about it. What we cannot do is spend city money and city
Yeah.
resources to advocate for it.
Right.
As personal council members talking to your constituents, you can express your opinion by all means. You can urge people to get involved.
So we could each, on our own, set up our own town halls and meet with our community members.
As long as you don't have a quorum.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
If-
actually,
Individually.
that's
Yeah.
your job, brother. That's what you should be doing. Yeah, I'm serious.
I just want to be sure. I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to break any.
But we can have all those conversations, not just even those engagements, and we've all participated in them. I've done them, in the past. But I mean, as far as appointing, getting willing, folks and groups, which we've
That's
had
usually
a lot of history.
happened outside of us,
Yeah.
And it's
Right.
like a community member that we can call on, and then they'll be
Yeah.
like, yeah, we'll form the group, and then they form it, you know?
Correct. And remember, on that group, the last time, they were a formal committee registered with the
Uh-huh.
state. They were able to take donations, they were able to buy
Uh-huh.
signs,
Yep.
and types of election
Uh-huh.
type expenses that they were able to incur, not using city funding, but
Right.
using donations that they received. And they had a treasurer, and they had some appointed members that were in charge, and then they had to carry that, because we couldn't do that. As city people, we could meet with them after hours, we could talk to them about the educational stuff, but we couldn't get involved in the necessary campaigning or lobbying, for this. So there's some restrictions on us.
Yeah.
But in that committee, it was a formed, actually, political committee.
Yeah.
And they did the work on that. And that's what we're gonna have to
Where
look
cities get in a lot of trouble is we did it, not the last time, but the time before. The city attorney is required to do an informational report about it, which I did, and we sent it, and everything was above board. We followed the rules precisely. And no sooner did it get out there than I heard from Jim Graves screaming about how we violated all these laws.
Yeah, that'll happen.
And then when I pointed out that you're a lawyer, but you don't know what you're talking about, he apologized to me, and I said, thanks, but you crapped on my head in front of the council.
Yeah.
So apologize to them, and he did.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
yeah.
it does happen, and we
So-
probably will get that kind of input from some of the people. That's why everything has
Follow
to
the
be
process,
really
right.
well
I
followed,
think,
well
yeah,
documented.
if I may, I did a water rate increase a few years ago, and I did a lot of the community educational components. So some of the other things that we could do is we could have a website within the city's website page just for educational components, kind of the information within this presentation, but geared more towards kind of layman's terms. Where does the money go? Why is it essential for the city?
Right, that's what we have to
We could have a bill insert within, for all of the residents that goes within their water bill. Again, educational components. The budget process that's coming up is another great opportunity to educate the public on where the funds go and how the city's budget is constrained. I speak Spanish. I am happy to give presentations evenings and weekends to any group in both English and Spanish. I know we have some members within the finance department that I can also help assist with those presentations. There's a lot of education that we are able to provide in order to answer these questions, and we do have some time. We have to have kind of all the resolutions. I guess I'll move on to the next slide because it kind of ties into what we're talking about here. So that now that we have some direction, what we need to do is we need to go back and kind of draft what that ballot measure language looks like and bring it back for you to effectively say yay or nay. Do you want an and or an or here? Do you want to include more clarification, less clarification? Are we meeting the word capacity? All of that. So that would come pretty quickly before you. And once that is kind of buttoned up, we would have 3 resolutions that would need to have approved for the ballot measure language itself, the notice of holding the special election with the caveat that was mentioned earlier, and then also the intent to have a consolidated municipal election means we want to consolidate with all of the other county elections that are happening on November 2nd. Then we'd have to notify the county register of voters by August that is our intent and that we have done all these steps and passed the resolutions. Okay. And then, if needed, we would have a public notice in a local newspaper regarding the ballot measure and our intent to do that. And then, of course, like we just kind of discussed right now, a lot of educational. That's going to be finance's focus, and we would definitely be available to do that as requested. We might even need to engage people because they're not always going to come to us. We might have to pick up the phone and go to meetings and figure out when their regularly scheduled meetings are, get on their agenda, kind of be proactive about it would be my recommendation. And of course, always be available to respond to citizen organizational inquiries regarding the utility user tax, again, for that educational component. At the same time, we have to be frank about evaluating what cost-cutting measures are we going to have to take if the ballot measure isn't supported and doesn't get approved. So difficult discussions about, would we have to close public facilities and which ones would we close? What types of programs would we reduce? Is there staff reductions that would need to be considered or contract services that would need to be reduced? So all of this collectively would need to be done pretty quickly here in the next.
And we've gone through that exercise
60 days,
previously,
yes.
so there maybe that's a starting point.
Yes.
But yeah, certainly.
I mean,
that's-
essentially, you're saying.
All that stuff's on the word process.
Yeah.
You're saying every department that falls under the general fund would have to reduce their expenditures by 10%, basically.
If we did a universal implementation,
It'd be
yes,
like
or
more
maybe
than,
it's
like
that.
19%, right?
Well,
Yeah.
that's a tax revenue.
Sometimes it doesn't happen that way.
We should note that we've already done that.
Right,
Even
yeah,
with the utility
exactly.
tax.
Yeah.
We are bare bones. And so it's going to be drastic. And lucky for Carla, this go around, she gets to prepare two budgets. One with the utility tax and what's going to look like in the future
Yeah.
without.
Parallel budgets.
And so it's going to,
Yeah.
it's a heavy task. But yeah, when you just think about, oh, you're only cutting 10%, well, you got to remember, we've done 2 years of
Right, yeah.
of
an
cutting
additional
measures
10%.
to increase our general fund reserve, and it's paid off with our financial statements, as you saw on the last audit. But there's not much left to cut, to be
Yeah.
frank.
Yeah.
I started shaving my head 10% at a time. Look at me now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Okay, one more, just additional question on being with this timeline and all these steps that need to be taken. At what is there a moment or a milestone in here where we can begin sort of the campaign side? And what I mean by campaign, not us, or committees. Is there any? If I get asked and a committee wants to form, when can they do that? I guess that's my question.
I think that would be like communicating with them now, and then after the resolutions are approved, that we would like to get them approved in June, because we have to turn them
Okay.
in by August, but we don't want to wait until August.
Yeah.
And what if you have some edits and some revisions, you want us to bring it back? We want to have some flexibility there. But
Okay.
certainly, after those resolutions are approved, that would be my recommendation, because now you have actual ballot language that you have approved that you're submitting to the county in hand versus, oh, it could be like this, it could be like that, and so that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
And the resolution would wait until June only because the language that we're trying to compose as far as the changes that we're making and.
I have already done some analysis. I looked at all of the ballot languages from all of the other cities that went in November and prepared some draft language. And we could bring it back as early as the next meeting to talk about it again and provide you some draft kind of preliminary language, and gives me a little bit of time to meet with our city attorney and make sure that he's okay with it. I think we have some fundamental things done already from the last go around. But I don't know if that's too quick.
Well, I mean,
or
we
not.
understand that the next 3 meetings are going to be heavy with finance, with budget material, and,
Yes.
we don't want to make it too heavy. But, if we can get at least a quick update each time, and if there's some action that we can take as a council, the sooner the better, I think, so that we can engage the community as quickly as possible after that.
Bill, what do you think about that? Okay.
The last time, we had no direction from council for whatever reason it wasn't brought to you. So I had to prepare the ballot language 3 different ways.
Mhm.
I had no idea what you wanted. So we're way ahead now.
Okay.
I can easily bring it to you. I have stuff on my computer already. Carla's got more stuff. It's going to be quite easy to
Okay.
put together.
Okay.
And
so-
these are, this type of resolution fits right into your budget discussion. It'd be a great time to have. it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay,
Great
great.
time.
Well, then that would be good if you could bring that back at the next meeting, if you have it.
I would like, Carla, if you could have, I know you broke it down to which departments, but not exactly like by percentages or actual amounts. If we could see something
Sure.
like that at the next meeting.
Absolutely. Yes, on the expenditure side and where the
Correct.
revenues go.
Where the
Absolutely.
revenues are going.
Mhm.
It's almost in the budget workshop.
I always have a
It's
question.
presented,
I mean, I
yeah,
have a
by
question
department.
about the change that, from by ordinance to by ballot measure. Did that predate Prop 218 or something? Is that why it
I
could be done by
believe
ordinance?
so,
Okay.
yes. And in my research, that's what I think it was, is that Prop 218 came into effect, and then we needed the ballot measure going forward.
All right.
Yeah, same thing for the TOT.
Yes,
Yeah.
that was my other
requires a
question.
ballot measure too.
And maybe this is a bad bad time to ask this question, but if this winds up being the only thing on the ballot in the city of Brawley, maybe should we consider increasing the TOT, putting that on the same ballot?
What's the TOT currently?
We have to keep in mind that the reason we can justify this as an emergency is because it's a tax we're going to lose.
Yes. Okay.
TOT is a tax that we already have.
Uh-huh.
And I think we're on better, firmer foundation if we tackle TOT at the next general.
Gotcha,
election.
okay, good answer.
It's a good point.
Yes, I would concur, that's what I've.
Yeah.
Because at one time, some of the.
We can justify declaring an emergency.
Sure.
Because this is a tax we're gonna lose and we need to keep it.
Yeah. Okay.
At one time, one of the local motel owners came to us and said that he thought that we should increase the
Increase it,
TOT because he felt like we weren't receiving the revenue we should receive
Sure.
from that. We've always been cautious because we don't really want to go and put ourselves out of business based upon competition within both the valley and otherwise, but we need to be very careful about that. But I do think we're probably due a TOT increase simply because costs have risen and we've been at that TOT tax for quite some
Yeah.
time. So I think at least a small increase in that area would be a good idea.
But before we, thank you, Chief, before we or if we're directed to bring that back, we are, staff is engaged in what I would call revenue leakage, back from those that are old enough like myself to remember Ronald Reagan. It's trust but verify.
Yeah, trust.
And that's, we have not, as an agency, been following up with some audits. We've already started a few of those on different things, utility tax for one, TOTs on the radar.
Yes.
So we'll be more active in like I said, we trust, but we want to verify that we're collecting all that we can on that revenue leakage piece.
Okay,
Good deal.
that's good.
All right, is there any more slides? That's it, okay.
That's it? Okay.
Feel like you got the direction you need?
I did, thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a great presentation, and very
Yes, thank you
educational.
very
And
much.
whatever we can include of that as we do the community outreach, I think is going to be helpful. I think a lot of people, there are many people that are engaged in the process, and they understand what the different pots of funds and where that money goes. But I think there are some people in the community that think, hey, your budget is, $50 million a year. Where's all that money going? And without an understanding that there are different, there's enterprise funds and wastewater and water treatment funds and that kind of stuff. And so I think it's an important point to make to the public that, this is the general fund and there's a lot that comes out of it. And, we have to do whatever we can to preserve the revenues and cut the expenditures.
And
But-
we are a full-service city.
Yeah, and that is
Very
very
important.
good
I've always
point,
said
Carla, and that's,
We're like any large city, but just small
yep,
package.
pretty
you know?
impressive.
Yeah.
It is. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla. Very nice presentation.
Well, I was double dog dared to keep this meeting at less than 45 minutes, but
Too late.
Well, you lost.
it ain't gonna happen.
I almost said double that.
I wonder if La Quinta's meetings go longer than ours.
Just a little.
Okay. That out of the way, we'll move on to item 5, informational items. 5A is a record of building permits for February 2021 in the city of Brawley, prepared by Oscar Escalante, our interim building official. That is on pages 71 and 72. And item 6 is departmental report. 6A is a monthly staffing report for April 2021, prepared by Personnel and Risk Management Administrator Shirley Bonillas. Backup is on page 73.
Honorable Mayor, council members, woo-hoo, we're going into the orange tier.
Oh, yes.
Life is better. On page 73 of your agenda is a current staffing. Library manager interviews went very well today. City manager is considering the candidates. Both of them passed very good interviews today, so he has a choice, and hopefully that will be in backgrounds in the next week.
Nice.
So we'll get a permanent person. Chris has been very cordial and nice to help us out, but don't want to tax on that too much longer. We did receive a resignation out of dispatch. The person will be with us for a few more weeks. We are swearing in a new dispatcher, on the 12th at 8:45 if you want to attend. We'll be swearing them in here, Chief Duran. And then we have another dispatcher and background. So our goal is to replace the one that's leaving us at the end of the month as quickly as possible. The overtime out of dispatch is horrible since they've been down 2 people now. Chief Water Treatment Plant Operator, we have a plan in place working with the state, and our Assistant Chief will be our interim chief. He is going to test for his required certification to be chief, and so we're looking forward to that, and the state gave us to September 30th to get that done. Any questions I can answer for you?
No.
Very well,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that report. All right, item 7, city council member reports. I'll start with council member Castro.
Yes, sir. I've been busy trying to finish up that community improvement project over at the American Legion. Again, I mentioned it last time, and I want to thank Councilman Nava for his assistance in helping us get those trees donated. We're pretty close to the end. We're looking at a reopening, probably the first week of May. We wanted to create that facility for the entire community to enjoy. So anyone will have access to that. And it's looking real good, which leads me to my next point, as I discussed, I think, with several members of the community, that one of the ideas that I had, for many years now, based on the work that I've personally done with other members of the community, to enhance our community, to improve certain areas that would otherwise not be taken care of or not be done because of budget restraints or because, for whatever reason. Over the years, we've managed to do a lot of work in the community. And I've brought it to you, Mayor Hamby, in the past, where I wanted to create a committee, so something like a community enhancement committee that would take on the role and of that leadership role of taking on these special projects that wouldn't be taken care of, that obviously the city doesn't have to take care of, or but that would at the end enhance our community, that would add value to it, not just for that individual community, but or that group, but to the entire community. And we've done that in the past with working along with the city, with some limited city resources, and not taking away from any city employees, not doing any of that. It's just adding to what we already have.
And you did that previously with the restroom construction over at Meserve Park.
Yes, sir, and that turned out to be a beautiful little project.
Yeah.
It was a lot of work. People were upset. It took us, I think, 8 months.
Right.
But it was all volunteer labor. It was all, very limited resources, but it turned out to be great. And it's a restroom.
And it's beautiful.
where little girls, the softball league would play there, and they would have to use the porta potties that, other folks in the community would use. And I just thought to myself, I would hate to see my child have to use one of those, but that is what we had. But we took care of it, and it was the entire community. I think at the end of the day, I think I put it down the name of 80 volunteers. They came and chipped in an hour, digging up trenches and whatnot. And the same thing is happening there right now, because it was first just a veteran type deal, right? But now other folks are coming out, and people want to be part of it because they see what can happen when we all come together. I think that if, as a city, we support something like that every year this committee independently could just take on a task to complete, to enhance our community, to benefit everyone, not just a limited number of folks or a certain group or organization, but the entire community. I brought that up to the past, and I guess at this time I'd like to ask you, Mayor, if we could bring that up for discussion at your, obviously when you think is the right time. I know we're going to be swamped with numbers and whatnot, but this is also very important to our community, I feel. And I have some ideas of how we would create it, but again, I'm trying to create something that is for the entire community, by the community, so I would like input from all of us 5 of us, and see how we can create this and make this happen as soon as possible.
Just put it on the agenda as a council member. You can request it either at the next one or the one after that or whenever you'd like, and put a presentation together. That way we know what your thoughts are, and I think that's a good way to start.
We can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to say that anytime we get the the mailer in our utility bill about a community cleanup day, my heart always skips a beat because I always initially think, great, we're going to get a community group together and do some cleanup, but no, it's, individually on your own property or whatever, get your trash together and take it to the dump or to the city drop site. But, I'm all about community engagement and volunteerism, and I think this is it's something great to put forward. And kind of like we need to put together a community group to campaign for the UUT, putting together a committee or community group to, to spearhead some of these improvement projects that the city can't or won't be able to get to. I think that's a great idea. So yeah, maybe you and I can get together and talk with the city manager and kind of put together your plan and then a date for presentation to the rest of council. I think that'd be great.
And we've done, and I know this is not in the same vein, but we've done like community paint out days. We've done a lot of things, right? We've done a lot of things even involving local stores where, discounted paint, that kind of stuff. We've done clean outs. I would love to see something more organized and defined, because we've done
and
individual
regular.
like alley cleanups, and Republic Services is all over it. Like, they will help. They really will. They're good partners.
And some, I'm sorry, continue. I'm sorry.
No, and so involving that element. But there's so many things that we could probably talk about and do. But yeah, certainly. I mean, I would just present with you.
And you and I know, Councilman, now. I mean, all of us know. You guys all build stuff, but. Somebody brought up the point of pride, like what makes people proud in our community. Some people are saying, oh, we need a statue, or we need a flag. And I'll tell you what makes people proud is to see their work and their accomplishments displayed for the 100 years to come. The things that we build together, every one of these individuals can go by and tell their kids, look, we built that, we did that. And I think people would be proud and take care of these things because they're out here 120 degrees Fahrenheit working on some of these on your off time, not getting paid, volunteering. There's a lot of pride in all of that. I mean, people care and they take care of their community because they put in that hard work. There's a lot of value to that. In my experience and all the folks that I've worked with, and I mean, it's been hundreds at this point of people that come on and help out just a little bit, an hour or two. And if you want to point to something that people would be proud of, people couldn't be more proud of something that they build with their own hands. So I'm so excited that I finally brought it up, and I can't wait to see what we can accomplish with that.
Great.
So if I can interject, keep in mind there's two different types of committees. There's committees that council supports, like Chamber of Commerce, that sort of thing. Organic committees that govern themselves and do what they want to do and don't have to follow the Brown Act. And then there's committees council appoints that have to follow the Brown Act and have agendized meetings, and nothing dampens enthusiasm like the Brown Act. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, good point.
Great, thank you. All right, anything else?
No, I'm sorry, I added so much to your time limit.
Appreciate the enthusiasm. Okay, Councilmember Wharton?
I can't follow that, so I got no. Thank you, Councilmember Castro, and thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be quick. Just a couple things. Did continue to get some calls on homeless, and I'm sure that's not something new to any member of council. My only comment there is I mentioned, I think our last meeting, that I was looking forward to a focus group that was coming together with some interested community members, and unfortunately the date that was popped out was the only few days that I actually had to travel. So I'm still in communication with some of those community members, and just a heads up to our chief and our city manager, intention is still to get those focus group members that have kind of presented themselves, as well as any others that might be interested. Not looking to make a big group out of it, it's just to start there, have this engagement, communication, and I believe the chief has prepared some materials and some discussion points on what we can do, and then of course maybe looking a little bit more into the future of some other things that we can consider potentially as a council, potentially even at the policy level.
Great.
So that's my update on that. And the only other thing, while I was gone though, I had the opportunity to meet former governor to go support a charity, former governor of South Carolina, former UN ambassador. So it was a great opportunity, wonderful quality time. And of course it was a great trip to see another part of the country. But I did get the opportunity to mention the city of Brawley, and certainly I'm very proud of, I guess personally, the service to being a part of this council, but in representing that, to another, at least former elected, it's always kind of a fun discussion point that not everyone gets to kind of bring up. So anyways, other than that, Mr. Mayor, the only, my final comment is I wrote down a note about, and nothing specific, so I'm just using this last 30 seconds to mention, we have talked about a little bit of community health and wellness, and I think maybe as we're reemerging, hope is in a positive direction out of COVID, still wanting in the future at the right time to bring some more community-wide initiatives. I know I've talked to Councilmember Nava about it. We've all been on kind of maybe some of our personal journeys, but really want to be inclusive of the entire community, and maybe some of the things that we can talk about there include, kind of the revival of our non-motorized plan, and continue to talk about, maybe some community engagements that we can have in the future that allows us to be outdoors, still, social distance and those things that need to continue to happen.
Great idea.
A lot of things we can do. So anyways, just telegraphing maybe some future specifics.
And I love that because it incorporates the non-motorized plan, which is bike lanes that we put in throughout the city, right? It also incorporates all the work that we've done at our parks to make the walking trails at many of them, right? And people are out in parks. It just incorporates a lot of those things that are already there, right? And so that's I'm all over it. I'm when you're ready to do that, I'm all over it with you. So
absolutely. I got to quit talking. I got to do something. So
that's right.
So I'm just more just like you mentioned. So
I was talking to someone the other day from not from Brawley. I think he lives in El Centro, and he was going on about Cattle Call Park. What a great park that is for walking and riding and playing. And I totally agreed with him. That's kind of one of the gems of the valley, I think.
Well, if you want to get a good outdoor kind of CrossFit workout, you can go over to Hinojosa Park and
that's true.
Run the circuit.
We've done it. We've done it.
Yeah,
we've done it there.
And then still make laps around that part. But no, there really is. I mean, we could even challenge ourselves if you imagine going by foot and hitting
equipment that is
4 different parks in one workout. And
your
actually,
body weight equipment.
Spartan race.
Spartan race.
The body weight equipment there.
Brawley Spartan
that we
race,
installed.
Right? So that's yeah.
The body
Except
weight. Yeah.
I wouldn't use the term Spartan.
I was going to say,
within the Brawley city limits.
No,
So that's the only thing I would change.
race.
Maybe a wildcat race.
Wildcat race.
Yeah,
that's perfect.
The thing about Cattle Call is that it's just, it looks so verdant and lush, and as those trees grow up around Hinojosa, that's going to be a beautiful.
And the new river flows around.
Yeah,
it's
that's
beautiful.
right. A river flows through it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Shirley thought that was funny, George. She liked that.
What dick you in there?
Okay, we'll move on to Councilmember Nava.
Well, I'll keep it very short. I attended the ICTC meeting, Transportation Commission meeting. I hope soon we're going to be meeting in person. We're still doing Zoom. It's just not the same. And I also participated in the League Division meeting. And again, it's not the most thrilling meeting, especially on Zoom. But I look forward to it, and I look forward to some normalcy. I think it's coming. I'm excited about it, but I'm also excited. I'll say this again. I know I've said it to the public, and I'll say it again to all of you. I'm excited about being part of this council. I think there's a lot of cool stuff that's happening. The team is developing really nice, from new chief to finance to parks to city manager and everyone else. Armando and Shirley are all doing great work, and so it's just a good team that's forming. Bill's doing fantastic work for us, and it's just a good team, so I'm excited about it, and I just want to see it. The other thing I'm going to mention, and I hope I don't steal your thunder, I have said it, and I'm going to say it again. I think you should do the mayor's presentation with people in attendance. I think it should happen. There's a lot to talk about, especially our future, and anything I can do to help on that. I have a projection screen, I have the projector, I have the sound equipment, so you don't need to buy any of that stuff. I can help design it, the city staff can help too, and it can be remarkable.
Yeah.
We could use like I told you, the East Side Fire Department, and it could be great.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Yeah, I'm in agreement that especially moving into the orange tier, I think it's it would be a good idea this year. The mayor address, the state of the city, to have at least some people in attendance. And the nice thing is that now we can live stream.
We can live stream it.
And whereas in the past, it's always just been videoed and then uploaded and archived. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think this is a good time to do that, and maybe we can work to be the first city to.
Let's do it.
to
Let's
that
do it. Let's be the
this year.
first. Why not?
Why
Let's
not?
just proclaim it and let's do it. Right?
That's right.
Well, that's all we have to do is just say it.
Name it and
Commit to
claim
it.
Okay,
That's
we're
it.
doing it.
We're all
Doing it.
done.
See?
That's four of
He
us
said
all
we're
fucked
doing
up.
it.
Just waiting on Sam.
He says we're doing it.
It'll just be you and Luke there.
Let's do it.
Crickets.
That's all it takes,
I'll
man.
do, hey, man, I'll take the mask off.
See?
I'll take it.
Anyway, yeah, because you got the vaccine.
Right?
Let's go. At my age, I got nothing to lose.
There we go. See, he's a brave man. But let's do it. Just proclaim it and do it. That's what I'm talking about. Like, honestly, we are doing
Yeah,
it. That's
we're
what
doing
I'm
it.
saying. It's like we are doing it. So let's just do it.
Definitely. Okay, let's do it. We'll pick a date. Tyler will get together and pick a date.
He's a good hype man.
Okay. Hey, you know, I'm telling you.
Thanks for stealing my thunder.
We proclaim.
Hey,
Hey, that's
your
hey.
thunder, man.
Hey,
He's
it's.
famous for that, don't worry.
I'm not gonna steal anybody's thunder
I'm just
because you
saying-
know what? You're gonna shine that day, brother.
Right.
And not just from the low haircut.
Right,
I'm
that's what I was
telling you.
gonna
You know
say.
what I mean?
The haircut.
Enough light,
Yeah.
there's a reflection. It's
Yeah.
like-
George, if you were like hyping me to like jump off the edge of a cliff, I
Hey.
think I would do it just because.
Hey,
It's
but I would
not
make
here.
sure there's somebody there to catch you, brother. You know what I mean?
That's right.
Like,
Trust exercise.
Yeah.
No, I like that. It gets me going too. I feel good. Like,
How do you think I
energizing.
feel? I'm pumped up too, man. Dude, I'm telling you, I've been on council a long time, and there have been low points on
Yeah.
here. There have been really low points, and there have been some great points. And this is a good, solid point right now.
Yeah.
This is better than I've felt in a long time being
Yeah.
on council.
There's
That's the
a lot,
truth.
a lot to be optimistic about.
There is. There's a lot to be optimistic about. And, you know, when I get excited, it's because, quite frankly, I'm seeing the change, a positive change, and it's happened over the past 12 months, you know, and it's been through COVID and all these other things. But then you see the strength within the city. You see the strength within departments. You see the strength in what they're doing. And, you know, we either get to be criticized about it or take credit for the positive stuff, right? But one thing we haven't done, and we're doing now, is, quite frankly, shining a light on the things that we are doing positively. And that, for me, is exciting, and it should be exciting for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, and we have just positive momentum going forward, so I get excited about it. And I'm telling you, if we proclaim it and we do it, there's no stopping us. Honestly, that's the truth. You know, Donnie's got great ideas. He brought that up before. He brought that up in a few years back as far as like even trying to get like a mini
Triathlon.
triathlon here in
Yeah.
the city, right? And it's like, okay, that fell on deaf ears at the time, but why does it have to?
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Why does something that we've talked about, like and this is more refined as far as like getting a crew together and a committee and doing other things and community projects and other things, why does that have to just be talk?
Right,
Why,
exactly.
why can't it be action?
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm not trying to take anybody's thunder. I'm just telling you, I've seen the ups, the downs, and unless we do it, and unless we say it and do it, it's not going to happen.
Exactly. Yep.
So let's just do it.
Okay. Do it.
That's right.
We're not gonna.
I second that.
There's no trademark infringement there. Just do it. But
No,
we're
it's
just gonna do it.
If we just say, let's just, maybe that's different, right?
That's
Instead of
different.
just do it? Yeah. Anyway.
Let's
sorry.
do it. Okay. Mayor Pro Tem
I've decided to
Couchman.
do it right now.
Okay.
No, I've decided to volunteer as the pace car for you guys on your run around the cattle call arena. I figure 25, 30 miles an hour, you guys ought to be able to handle that.
Maybe four of us.
I'm going to
per
tie you
weekend?
all four of you to the bumper of my truck.
Sam, do you
drag
think it'd be a
around.
violation of the Brown Act?
I
if
suggest
four of us
that
participate?
that you keep up the pace or you'll fall and I'll drag you. No, that's all right, man, because you'll lose weight one way or another.
Hey,
That's
right?
for sure. You know, so, okay. All right, haven't done a whole lot other than being out there in the community. Looks like a lot of people are, there's quite a few people out there in the community that are getting together now. As long as they're wearing masks, all those kinds of things, I think that's important. But we're seeing more movement, I think, in the community, more businesses coming a little bit more open, things happening out there right now. Some of the organizations that do fundraising, I think, have been hurt through the COVID, and they're coming together now and doing a lot of that out there. And we're seeing more things. The Doves, I think, is coming up with their fundraiser. We have a lot of activities kind of on hold, but they are starting to come out and start to do different things. Some of our social clubs and some of our organizations within the community are starting to open up a little bit more, and they're open for like meals, and they're open, and American Legion, I know, the Stockman's Club, I think Hidalgo Society, they're all having Elks. Everybody's doing things right now, and I think that's important for our community to get back into that mode while being safe. I did attend the League of Cities meeting, and it's a Zoom meeting, so it's difficult to interact like we normally do in the normal circumstances, but I thought it was important that I be there and attend and listen to some of the things. There's some interesting things going on. El Centro's got some things going on in terms of Interstate 8, and so it's good to be on the news and figure out, what they're doing over there, because they are closing Interstate 8 at times, and so it's good to know those kinds of things, because they've got that bypass going in over south on Imperial Avenue. So that's happening over there. Here in town, I travel around all the time. I see a lot of city staff doing a lot of things. I see a lot of people here in the community, and a lot of good going on, and a lot of things happening out there. It's kind of more dynamic than what I would have figured under COVID, but it seems to be very, very a dynamic community, and people are very resilient, and they're recovering. Also, on the vaccination front, I go to a lot of the vaccination sites. I'm transporting people there, or I happen to be going there and taking people there that I know, and encouraging people to go in. And a lot of the people in the community are becoming vaccinated. And we did some at Vaughn's the other day. I was there taking an older lady in for her vaccination. One of my friends who I never thought would get vaccinated got vaccinated yesterday. And he's a classmate of mine since kindergarten. And he's so negative about everything, I didn't think he would want to get vaccinated, and he did. So I thought that was important for him and for most of our group of our age and that type of thing. But I think that's going to open up even more and more and more people will be vaccinated. I know there's some fear out there, but I also think COVID is a very bad disease, and if you've got to take whatever steps you have to take to protect yourself and your family. And that's kind of what's happening out there. So with that, that's what I've been doing. I travel, I drive around the community every day. I check out different things that are going on, some of the construction that's going on. I happen to check out.
You act like an inspector when you show
Yeah,
up?
I do. I checked out Legion Road, and I wave at all the people. They don't know who I am, but I do wave at them. And I went down Legion Road and over into the other community.
Like you're in a
over there.
parade like this?
Yeah, I
or
just
how?
go. Yeah, I wave.
Everyone knows who you are.
I wave.
Sam.
They know who I am because it says it
Everyone
on the
knows.
truck,
Yeah.
Sam truck.
It still says mayor.
So they know who I am. Yeah. I still have the signs, but they won't stick to my truck because my truck's aluminum.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
So
man.
I can't stick
Bummer.
the signs, or else I just have
So
them
your
on
chest,
there.
you put it-
Just
your
drive
pacemaker?
around all the time. Okay. With that said, that's my report, and I'm finished. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, I don't have a whole lot to report either tonight. Everyone has had very little to report and somehow extended it out, 15, 20 minutes apiece.
We love you, Luke.
I'm going to try to keep it short. I also attended the League of California Cities meeting by Zoom and gave a quick report update
Quick?
from the city of Brawley. Quick, it was quick.
It was a quick one.
It was a short one. But I'm always impressed by what's getting done by city staff, and it's just, I'm grateful for, as Carla mentioned, a full-service city and what all we're able to accomplish on a tight budget. So I hope that the community will be receptive to the UUT and understand, as they have in the past, why it's needed and whatever changes we need to make to it to bring it into the modern era. I got several calls based on some homeless activity, an encampment on West Main, and I spoke with the chief of police about that, and so I appreciate the work that the PD is doing to interact with our homeless population in a compassionate way, but also understanding that it affects people that live nearby and can be a fire hazard or safety hazard from time to time. I got a few calls also about the helicopter activity that we had this past weekend, and that's the first time I think that's happened to me. Usually when MCAS Yuma comes and does their exercises over the city, by and large people seem to be appreciative of that, or like the sound of freedom, I guess, if you want to call it that. But I don't know if it was the time frame or if it was the type of exercises they were doing, but people, yeah, just kind of like lazy figure eights around the city. People just were wondering what's the point of that. So I don't know.
I can tell you.
Yeah, you can tell me.
I sat in a meeting, a briefing for these operations,
Uh-huh.
and it's very similar. They said Brawley it's very similar in the entire region to Iraq, and specifically Brawley to Baghdad.
Wow.
Not in the looks necessarily, but the layout.
Okay. I'm glad you clarified that because I was a little concerned. I mean, all the video I've seen of Baghdad, it does not seem as green as Brawley does.
No,
So
but just the layout,
Okay.
kind of the entire region.
they have like eastern and western avenues and
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
yeah, there you go. Okay, well, that's good to clarify that.
They have a
for
river
people.
drive there? Or no?
What's that?
Just kidding.
They have a river that runs through.
River
too.
Drive, River Drive.
Yeah, it's not.
Not the new river, but
New River Drive?
I sat in a Zoom meeting for the Public Health Department, a COVID update, and we'll have another one of those this week. And in the past, we've had issues with the goalposts at the state level moving, not in our favor. This time around, they've moved, and it seems to be in our favor. But yeah, it's interesting to see the numbers slowly increasing, but being able to move into the orange tier. And perhaps it won't make a difference. I know in some states that have been mostly open, their positivity rates haven't been much greater than ours being mostly closed. So it'll be an interesting exercise anyway. But yeah, beyond that, I just want to thank city staff for the work they're doing, fire department and PD, our most outward-facing departments, deal with all kinds of calls, and we talked a little bit about dispatchers tonight, and as was brought to us before, they have a very difficult job because the people that they talk to are most of the time in dire straits, so we appreciate the work that they do. And it's just as George mentioned, it's an exciting time because it just feels like I don't know, like we're coming back to life in a way. So
Yeah.
I am excited to deliver a mayoral address here in the near future.
See, now he's pumped up. See, now
I've
he's
got
pumped up.
I got my laptop here. I've actually started a document there. I'm
Four score and 7 years ago.
That's right, 4 score. I've been seeing a lot of old photos of Brawley, old Brawley, like 1920s, 1930s on Facebook recently.
2006.
and It's amazing to see. I was waiting for George to say something about when Sam was.
I wasn't.
I
here
wasn't.
then.
Yeah.
1920s
It's because Sam was
Yeah.
holding the camera.
Yeah.
Sam,
But,
50s is
Sam was holding the
back
camera on those. yeah.
it's just incredible to see these photos because it looks like a big city. I mean, these tall buildings and every street's got these big buildings, but it seems like there was a lot of fires and a lot of earthquakes back
A
then.
lot of
that
earthquakes and fires.
Took a lot of adobe and unreinforced masonry buildings down, but anyway, it's an exciting time to be alive in Brawley, and that was an encouraging update on the Brawley, on the library manager potential position there. So I just feel like, and I think it's been said before, that we're compiling an A-team of city leadership that's gonna bring us out of COVID and put us, in a better position than we were going into it. So that's very encouraging to hear that. And I appreciate the update from the finance department tonight about the UUT. And with that, I'll wrap up that short report.
I just wanted to also thank Alma. I mentioned everybody, and I didn't thank Alma for the work that you're doing too, because you keep us on track and certainly helped me recently with certain things. So I appreciate you very much. Thank you.
She always has cookies to give me when I come in. I don't know if she
There
does
you
that
go.
for any of the rest of
You don't get the cakes?
No, she
You
doesn't.
don't
Oh,
get the
yeah,
cakes?
I don't get any cookies.
She had a dog
She had
cookie last
pastelitos
time.
for me, Doug. What? Yeah.
Donnie's like, she gives me tortas. I don't know about the rest of you.
He only gives her
I'm
cookies.
sold. If she gives me tortas, like that's it.
Oh.
I'll be here every Friday.
Okay.
Friday.
Item 8, city manager report.
Thank you, Mayor. Due to the fact that I have the unders at 8 o'clock, the meeting finishing, and that our city attorney charges by the hour, I'll be brief. Oh, yeah, and Spectrum. Yeah, no. So what I want to say is just that the fruits of the labor the credit should be given to, we have 130 odd staff members, and you've seen the positive results. All 130 teammates are pulling in the same direction on the rope, and you're seeing the benefits of that. Please continue to follow us on social media so we can let you know what's going on. We've done some great things in parks already. Police, Armando gave a good report. Finance, you've seen the fruits of what's going on there. It's the whole team. I know I'm leaving people out, but there's 130 plus staff members that are pulling on the same direction on that rope. Thank you.
Thanks, Tyler. Wow, it's amazing. All right, item 9, city attorney report.
Well, there's a lot of things going on, nothing I can talk about.
Okay.
And it's pretty, you wouldn't be excited about it anyway.
If he told us, he'd have to kill us.
Right. Sometimes I wish I was an attorney just to say that. Right? It's like,
Just to say that.
I can't talk to you about it.
Item 10, city clerk report. And it doesn't appear we have anything for closed session. So at this time, I will adjourn the meeting, and our next regularly scheduled meeting will be for April 20th at 6 p.m. here in council chambers.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bravo, Mayor. Bravo!
They did stop at 9, though. The helicopter